Okay, we're getting set up to clean this deck. A couple of preliminary things that you want to do before you start mixing chemicals and spraying is to kind of look around the deck and make sure that none of the chemicals that you're going to be putting on is going to ruin any of their furniture. Like the sodium hydroxide and stripper can spot a painted metal surface or like a grill or something like that. So you want to take a little bit of precautions necessary to, like this, when we're spraying the railings right there, that overspray would get on that surface. So we're going to want to move this table, those chairs back. There's a couple other chairs over there. If it's something that's underneath the deck or maybe a grill that they want to leave on the deck, sometimes a customer will leave the grill on the deck and we'll kind of just move it around. If they don't have a cover for it, then we'll want to get it covered with plastic. As far as plants go, when we're spraying stripper, we want to pre-wet plants with the low pressure rinse tip. Let's see here. I have one of these here. The low pressure rinse tip right here. It's the 2510 tip. That'll rinse at low pressure without being so low that it's going to draw chemical out of the machine, the pressure washer. We'd rinse some of these more delicate plants and then put some light plastic, some 0.3 mil plastic over it while we're putting our stripper on to protect them. And then as soon as we're done applying stripper in that section, we'll just take the plastic off and rinse those plants again. You don't want to leave the plastic on too long because it'll burn the plants out. And then before a lot of these decks, you know, the goal for this deck is to get all the previous stain stripped off and conditioned so we can apply TWP, which is a penetrating oil. If we apply TWP just over the top of it, it's going to get real inconsistent. The floor is going to look different than the railings. It's going to get real glossy too. So we want to try to get all this stuff removed. Now, in some situations, if you don't necessarily know if it's going to work, you can test it. We have a small little handheld pump sprayer that you can spray like a little section, and then you can also spray a little bit of the downstreamable stripper on a little section, and then wait about 10 minutes and pressure wash both of them off and see if basically the downstreamable stripper is effective at removing the stain. Because if it is, you want to go that route because it's less caustic and it's not as harsh on the wood. So you would want to go that route, and it's also faster. But I know specifically on this deck, Sickens was previously put on, so we have to use the HD80 stripper, which means that we have to apply it direct with a pump. Some of the things that, like if the customer didn't already tell me, she told me that she'd put Sickens on this deck. I'm looking at stuff like this where it's glossy. I know that the light duty stripper that we use is the Restore Deck downstreamable stripper. Spraying that on here isn't going to be strong enough to remove this even at full strength. So we're going to have to put the HD80 on this. And whenever you do a test on a surface, you always want to test the part of the deck that is most intact. You don't want to test like the floor because that's going to come off easily no matter what. You want to test the surface that's going to be the most difficult to remove. So I'm not going to test this because we're just going to go with the HD80. We're going to spray it on the entire deck and get it pressure washed off. And you come up here, you'll see kind of the condition of the deck right now. You've got a decent amount of mold buildup. You've got what looks like, you know, we see this in a lot of cases where maybe a homeowner had done their deck, or somebody that didn't know how to use chemicals had put on multiple layers of stain. So we likely have 2 layers of stain that we have to strip off the deck. So we're going to get this all stripped off and then get the house rinsed off really well, and then we'll condition this deck. And then this customer actually opted for our floor sanding option, so we'll floor sand it and then we'll get it stained with the TWP deck stain. So we'll go to the next part, which is mixing up the chemicals. Okay, so I'm going to get started on mixing the chemicals. Now, I like to personally have like some of my gear be like the messy gear, and then some gear be the nicer gear if I'm working inside someone's house, or just stain application stuff that doesn't usually get messy. So this is kind of like my nice hat. So I would take this hat off and just I'd be wearing this on a pressure washing day. As far as protective gear goes, I just have some rubber gloves here. I have a mask for mixing chemicals and spraying on the stripper. Any chemicals I'm spraying, I'm going to be wearing a mask. I have a pack here that I keep extra gloves in, and then I also have a 4-way nozzle holder. This has 2 higher pressure tips and then 2 soap application tips. One of the soap application tips is going to be a 0 degree tip, so it's going to spray up to 30-40 feet high. And then we have actually that's the soap tip. It's going to spray about 30 or 40 feet. And then we have a 25-30 tip that's going to spray closer range. It's going to be the tip that we're going to use most of the time. Then we have a low pressure rinse tip and a low pressure rinse tip with a 0 degree. So we'll use these quite often for soap application and doing some light duty rinsing. We also have a turbo nozzle in here for decks that might be solid stain. And then with this pressure washer, we most often use the white tip that would go with a pressure that's rated at 3 to 4 gallons per minute. So as far as mixing of the chemicals go, what I do is I mix up about this much water. I don't want to have a completely full 5-gallon bucket, and I have just a plastic stir utensil here. This is the brightener here. We already have our stripper mixed up, but it's the same concept for the stripper versus the brightener. What I'm going to do is mix a cup of the powder with 1 gallon of water is 5 gallons of water, so I'll be mixing 5 gallons. I'm going to start stirring it, and I'm going to slowly add in 5 cups. I've already done 3 cups here, so I just have to add 2 more. So I'll just get my mask put on. Again, that's the Restore Deck brightener that we use for brightening the deck. If we're using the same concept, but we're going to be stripping it with something that's going to be downstreamed, then we'd use this chemical right here. We're going to have a separate video basically on downstreaming and how to operate the pressure washer, so you can go to a different link if you want more instruction on downstreaming or how to use the pressure washer. Let's see here. As far as other gear that I'm wearing, I'm just wearing a rain pants. If it was raining out, I'd wear a rain jacket too, but I don't need a jacket. It's about 85 degrees out, and I don't ever get wet on this upper half, at least with the stripper. I might get it when I'm pressure washing, but I'd rather be a little bit wet than too hot. And then under the, for footwear, I'm just wearing, I think these are muck boots, the Jobber. These are real nice because the rain pants keep the stripper down, and then it runs off these rubber boots here. And then just have the shirt kind of tucked in here. I wouldn't want it draping down because then this part of me might get stripper on it, and then when I go to wear pants later, that stripper could kind of soak in through the shorts that I'm wearing underneath here, and it would get pretty uncomfortable. You want to keep that stripper off of your clothes as much as possible, and definitely not touching your skin. If you were to get any stripper or chemical in your eye, you gotta flush your eye out immediately with water for about 15 minutes. It happened to me a couple years ago. It was painful, and I washed. It was just like I was mixing some chemical up, and I didn't have these glasses on when I was mixing the chemical, and a drop just got up and hit me right in the eye, and it was a HD80 stripper, and it burns immediately, so you have to get your eye rinsed out right away. And if it's really bad, then you have to go to the ER. But let's see here. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get started on well, what we'll do is we'll come over here and we'll we'll get this sprayer ready for the HDA stripper. So this 5-gallon bucket of stripper was already mixed up, so it's ready to go. Before each use, I would always mix this stuff up again, because there might be a little bit of sediment in there, stuff that didn't quite dissolve. And again, I'm always going to be pouring this over rocks. I don't want to pour it over grass where it could kill the grass. So I'll go ahead and get my glasses put on for this stuff. And now, so whatever I don't use here, I can just pour back into that bucket when I'm done. So that's kind of the basis of mixing up chemicals and pouring everything, getting everything set up. So I'm gonna go and make sure all the masking's done, get stuff pushed away, and then we'll get the chemicals start to put on. Okay, so we got some of the items moved back. I'm just going to take this. There's no pressure on it right now. I'm just trying to get it wet so the plants don't heat up too much. So taking the rinse tip, getting these nice and wet. If the plants get real hot under plastic on a hot day and you don't wet them down, they'll burn out. That's why, you know, we will wet them down here, and then we kind of just put our plastic on it momentarily. And take it off right away and rinse them right away so that they don't die. And these are more delicate plants that we have to cover with plastic. Something like this is not very delicate. What I would do is wet this down, and then I would rinse it right away after the stripper is put on. At that point, it's going to be kind of diluted, and we don't ever have an issue with killing those kinds of plants. We've never killed any plant really ever stripping. This is just a precaution I want to take, and I want the crew to take, to make sure that it never happens in the future, because I don't want to replace a bunch of plants for people. So the chemical, after it goes on a deck and gets rinsed off, is so diluted that it's never an issue. So now we would just take some plastic here. Just a 0.3 mil poly. And we could even save this, just kind of put it into a ball, put it in the truck, so we don't have to use more for every job. Just have some set aside for when we have to do something like this. Not every deck needs this. A lot of decks just have like a cement patio underneath, or the plants that are there are just real thick bushes like this where we don't have to worry about them. Get the foot down here. Okay, so we'll get that one covered up too, and we should be ready to get our stripper put on. Okay, so we're ready to put our stripper on. What I do is, on a painted surface such as this, if the stripper gets on that painted surface, it'll probably spot it, or if it's oxidized, it might actually kind of take off some of the oxidization, which will just make it look inconsistent. So we want to avoid that. So we're going to pre-wet it. Any surface that we don't want the stripper to really affect, we're going to pre-wet. We're going to put our stripper on, and as soon as we've kind of moved away from the area where the application of the stripper isn't going to get on that area, we're going to rinse it right away again. Now, deck crew is typically a two-man crew. What we would do here is one person would come back out here and probably get the stripper ready to start spraying, mixing up the chemical and everything. A second person would get the pressure washer ready. That second person with the pressure washer is going to come up here and start rinsing stuff while the other person's laying out the stripper on everything. Once the person laying out the stripper gets to a certain point and the person with the pressure washer doesn't really have to rinse, then they can actually start removing the stain, assuming that it's dwelled on the surface for a decent amount of time. So what I will do here is just kind of, there's no pressure on here right now. The pressure washer isn't actually on. I'm just getting the surface wet here. And I don't, I want to try to not get a lot of this pre-wetness onto the deck itself, because it's going to dilute the stripper. We don't want to dilute the stripper because it'll be like a lot of the stuff closer to the house may not come off. You gotta be real wary of metal surfaces. It'll spot that pretty easily. So, now it rained earlier today. You want to take this for Brownie and rinse for me after I'm putting it on? It rained earlier today. You can see that the deck's moisture level is probably in the 20 to 25% range at least. It's okay for stripping. You wouldn't want to strip if it's pouring out rain, because it'll dilute the stripper too much and it won't be very effective. I'm looking at this deck and I can see areas where the grill was right there. A big patch where maybe a table sat that's more protected. You can see more sheen. I know from looking at this that all of the outside stuff is going to take one coat, but this stuff right here, I'm going to want to have that stripper sit on that surface longer, and I'm going to probably put on multiple coats to make sure that this stain releases from here relatively easily. We're also going to be floor sanding, so I know ultimately all this stuff is going to come off. It's going to be consistent, but it helps the process if you let the stripper dwell on the surface for a decent amount of time. We're talking probably 10 to 15 minutes for the majority of the stuff, maybe 20 minutes for 20 to 30 minutes for some of the more difficult stuff. If it's really difficult, like bare deck stain, we wouldn't even be using this chemical. We'd probably be applying a gel stripper with a brush in that kind of situation. So I'm going to start getting the stripper put on before that. You know, you want to do it before this stuff starts to dry, and you communicate with the other guy that you're working with and say like, hey, I'm moving over to this section and maybe it looks a little bit dry. So you're going to tell them to come over there and pre-wet that area. So we'll get started here. So turn the switch here, get it pressurized. Get this dial turned out about 3/4 of the way. I'm going to spray about like that. I'm going to first spray everything on the deck floor and then on the inside of the railings, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do the outside of the railings. So I'm going to do the outside of the railings. I'm going to come back like this, and that's going to be the last piece that I'm going to do. And I'll get all the outside done, and then the pressure washer, the person actually removing the stain, can get started. So. As I'm working, just as the same system I go through as I'm pressure washing, hit the floor here, and then hit the inside of the rail here too. I go all the way across, floor, inside of the rail, and then I work my way across and then down the steps. as I'm spraying, I'm adjusting the tip so that it's like that on the floor, and then I'm more of a mist on the railings so that it doesn't spray and go everywhere. It's a little bit easier to control that finer mist. As I'm working, as I'm spraying the stripper on, you can see it start to dry up. When it completely dries, it becomes ineffective. So what the person that's doing the rinsing can do is just kind of lay a little bit of water on the surface so that stripper stays active and continues to work. And then I would also want to hit these other spots a couple of times that are real thick, like right there. I'm going to focus a little bit more on these, or maybe up close to the house right there, and then he's just going to kind of mist it. You don't want to get it soaking wet, but to the point where it's just staying wet enough so it stays active. So we'll get the stripper put on right here, and I'll kind of show you how I put it on the outside. So I'm just going to lean over, tilt this thing sideways, and then get it sprayed on the outside as much as I can. If I have to go on the outside, maybe to get the underside of this piece, or whatever piece I have to, you can do that. It's just a lot faster to do it from on top of the deck to get the outside railing here. Cool. So that section would be done. So now your partner would go over and rinse that siding off, because I just got a bunch of stripper kind of on the wall there. So you go over there and rinse that. Now we're doing the video and it's a little bit harder to do it like this, but I would typically at this point, your partner would kind of start to pressure wash while you get the remainder of the outside stripped, and maybe the pillars underneath need to get stripped. This stuff is sat long enough. If you do a scratch test, you can see that it's coming right off with your finger. That's when you know it's going to come off with low pressure. So they would start to get it pressure washed off while I work on the rest of the deck here. And, you can see that when I'm spraying the stripper on, I'm making sure that I get stripper on all the surfaces. If I miss this area, when it comes to get pressure wash, this isn't going to come off. You're going to have patches left over that don't have to be sanded. So you really want to make sure you get everything. You can see why I would be wearing these pants right now. I'm spraying into myself. If I'm wearing shorts or whatever, it's going to get on my skin. But it doesn't get really past here. So I'm spraying this, and I'm trying to hit this surface and this surface right here as I'm spraying. Okay, so this is kind of the responsibility of the person with the pressure washer, but they're going to be down here after I'd already done the outside here, and get these clamps rinsed off. Then we'll pressure wash it. A lot of wood fiber is going to come down on these plants. So when we actually come back to rinse them after the fibers are down here, we're going to use the same tip, but with the pressure washer on, we're going to give them a good rinse. Okay, so I'm going to get started on pressure washing now. As far as the hose setup, I have two 50-foot hoses, high pressure hoses connected to each other. And the reason why I do that is so that if you just have one hose, the hose is going to constantly want to fall off because of gravity. It's going to want to constantly go back down to the ground, and you're constantly going to be jerking it around, and it's going to get tiring. So I have basically a 50-foot worth of hose on the deck, then I'm going to kind of shift around as I do the deck, just so that it's free and I don't have to fight it while I'm pressure washing. So you want to get started? If I didn't use any of the chemicals, this stuff would not come off. It would be super hard. I have to use really high pressure. So you're going to see as I do a sample here how easily it comes off. Now, as I'm pressure washing, it's going to be the same kind of method as what I applied the chemical. I'm going to do the floor up until a section, then I'm going to do the inside of the railing, and then I'm going to do the floor, do both sections of railing. I'm going to be really methodical in my railings and everything to make sure that I get everything consistently. I don't leave anything behind. So here's a sample of what the floor looks like. So you can see that as I'm pressure washing, I am using a sweeping motion. The final part of my stroke is going up and I'm releasing the pressure. And on both sides, I'm sweeping the deck off and then oscillating motion versus a hard start and stop, because you're going to see those marks in the deck floor. I'll show you an example. I wouldn't usually do this, but we're going to be sanding the floor, so it'll be fine. So you can see that stop mark right there. That's because instead of going like this and pushing up on each side, I stopped, and that mark, I'm going to pressure wash that off. That's going to be hard to get out with just pressure washing. It'll need sanding. Okay, so I'm going to get started in that corner, work my way around, and do the railing. So if you want to back up so you can kind of see more of the picture. See that as I'm doing this tight area, I'm not just trying to hit this like this. This is what happened. This has already been hit, so I'm not really too worried about it. But as I'm pressure washing, I'm coming out and going in. I'm not just hitting this. So I'm fanning out, fanning in, fanning out. You don't want to do this. See all these marks that are left? I'm going to try to get those out now, but you don't want to just hit a spot like that. You want to always have a fan motion. I pressure wash, I'm going from end to end. The natural start and stop point of the board is where I start and stop. I'm not going to stop in the middle of the board here. With this type of railing, there's going to be a little bit on the outside here, and I'm going to hit this while I'm on the upper level, not when I go around to do the outside. I'm going to get that little piece there. It's this piece right here that I'm doing on the outside of that lip. Outside of that lip, I'm leaning over. You want to make sure you get everything, all the parts of the deck. This isn't my full rinse yet. I'm going to do a full rinse after I get the whole deck done. But I don't want to let those fibers dry on the house. Otherwise they will they'll start to harden and kind of stick to the house. So you want to rinse it right now, but then you do a full rinse when you're done with the whole deck. So we will get the rest of this deck pressure wash on the inside and the floor, and I'll show you kind of the system for doing the outside of the railings. My method when I'm doing the floor is to basically split a board up into two. I'm going to go over one pass, oscillate, come back over the same board in the same length. So I'm going to go over one section of that board, this half of the board twice, move on to the next piece twice, go on to the next one twice. So watch how I do this, and once you get it down, it goes really fast. I always have a starter strip that I do, where I kind of go under it like this, at this angle, before I get going with the floor. Generally speaking, you go with that motion. You may have some tough areas. If you have a tough area, it doesn't mean go right up next to the wood. You're going to damage it that way. It just means maybe go over it with a couple more passes to try to get it removed. You have some limits as to how much pressure you're going to put on the wood. And some stains are going to be so stubborn that they're not going to be able to get removed through this process. So they may have to get removed through sanding. Now you can see that as I'm rinsing the deck, the railings, I'm also hitting these really hard and really good. You really don't want that stuff the wood fibers to dry on that. It's really hard to remove afterwards. As we stain the deck, we're always going to have to use a little bit of thinner and wipe down these spindles, because no matter what, you can't get them perfectly clean. You want to get as much of that stuff off as you can right now. When those wood fibers are wet, they turn black. You can't see them. So you have to look real close on dark surfaces like screens or railing spindles to make sure that they're cleaned off. So I'm pressure washing the floor of the stairs now. I'm personally going to leave the extension on for the stairs. The stairs are probably the messiest part. because the water gets trapped in the corner and wants to come back up into your face. So I'm going to get the floor of the stairs pressure washed, and then I'm going to take this extension off and go straight from the tip to the gun here, and I'm going to use that for the railing. So I'll do like 3 or 4 boards here and just show you how that transition goes. I would actually do all of the steps, and then I'll come back and start doing the spindles, because at that point I don't really need the extension anymore, because I'm going to start doing the outside of the railings. So doing these posts, I'm always trying to get as much as I can on this side when I'm on the inside of the deck, and I also get as much as I can on the outside of this piece when I'm on the outside, because this corner is rounded. You're going to want to hit this side first from here, and then the other side from the outside. I'm going to use the extension up until a point in which I can't reach anymore. Then I'm going to take the extension off, connect the tip right to the gun, and then I'll go up on the ladder here. When I'm using one of these ladders, this ground's really level around this deck, which is really nice, but a lot of times we don't have this level of a ground to work with. So if we're setting the ladder up like this, you want to get 3 points really nicely level, and then you'll want to use the pivot tool. So this would be the pivot tool, and we would just stick it under the low point of the ladder so that we can get it leveled out. This is pretty stable like this. I'll get this a little bit closer to the deck. So I don't need the pivot tool for this section, but I might need it later on. It's pretty rare for me not to need it on a deck. Usually the ground isn't very level. So I'll get started on the outside of the railings here. Let's jump up here. I'll skip this section. I'll go up here on the ladder and do this section quick. So, a lot of times this is how I situate myself on these ladders when I'm doing a deck. Okay, so we'll get the rest of this outside done, and then we'll get our conditioner applied. Okay, so now we're to the point where we're going to rinse off the house, get everything brightened and conditioned. So we're going to downstream the conditioner using a soap tip here. We're using a hydrochemical injector with a Restore Deck brightener. I'm going to lay it out on the floor on the inside of the spindles, and I'm going to go on the outside of the deck, hit out the outside, the pillars if I have to, if we're standing in those, and then I'll let it sit for about 15 minutes and I'll come back and get everything rinsed off. You can see how much wood fibers and pulp and everything that's on the siding here. Now, I always tell people to take off screens. I email them before we come out to stay in their deck to tell them to remove the screens, but sometimes they can't or they don't. And it's okay on something like this because you can pressure wash it from this side to get this wood fiber out. But on a screen like this right here, you can see that they removed the screens here they never had installed. On that one right there, the only thing we can do is pressure wash it lightly and then maybe kind of come back and take a rag to it. But the homeowner's likely going to have a little bit of cleanup to do on their own because they didn't take that screen out. And we can't. The wood fibers kind of get trapped in that screen and pushed into it. There's no way to rinse it off. Versus like, you know, we can rinse off glass, no problem, but a screen is a little bit different. So we'll get the pressure washer turned on and get this all conditioned right here. When I start the conditioner, I have 100 feet of line that this has to go through before I start seeing chemical on the tip. You're going to see it's just basically clear water, and all of a sudden it'll get sudsy from the surfactants that's in the conditioner. It's going to probably take about 10 seconds or so before that happens. We already ran it a little bit, so it's going to be instant. You're going to see that there's going to be suds right away because there's already soap in the line. But just know that it takes a little bit. Sometimes if it doesn't work right away, or it takes longer than say 15 seconds, it could mean that the injector is clogged. So you would have to go through the other video where we show kind of how to replace an injector, or kind of how to deal with that situation. So we'll get started here. So here we're applying the Restore Deck brightener, but the same process follows if we were to use the Restore Deck stripper. We had used the HD80 stripper, which needs to be applied with the direct pump, the battery powered pump. But if it was a situation where it was like previously a TWP or a translucent stain, we'd be applying the stripper, this Restore Deck stripper, downstreaming it and applying it the same exact way that I'm putting a brightener on. So you can see how much faster it goes to get that applied. So that's why we would pick that route if we can. We just couldn't do that with the Sicken stain. So just to give you a heads up in case you get in a situation where you can apply the Restore Deck stripper. Okay, so now we're going to get everything rinsed off the house. I'm going to start on the house, pressure washing from about this high all the way down. You can see that this wood pulp gets pretty far out on the house. So I'm going to get it rinsed off as far out there as I can get. And when I'm on the ground, I'm going to make sure I get as far away from the deck as I can get where I can still see wood pulp. And I'll start in the house, rinse down, rinse the deck off, then rinse the railings, and kind of go in the same motion that I do for everything else. Start with the house and work my way this way. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to pressure wash the deck, and I'm going to go in a sweeping motion and push the wood pulp off the deck. And as I do that, I'm probably going to get a little bit more on the house, so you're going to have to check it again for wood pulp. Super important to get all the wood pulp off. One of the most common things that people complain about. So I'll show you what I do here. White tip for this, for the rinse in this scenario. See a couple areas over there I can't quite reach with this tip, this white tip, so I'm going to go to 0 degree tip to rinse. You just have to do this at a distance. You can't get too close, otherwise it'll damage the wood or whatever it is. Back to my white tip now. That as I did that, now I got more on the siding, so I have to rinse it again. So I started on this side, swept that off, and did this section of this railing, and now I'm going to go this way and sweep everything off the deck. I do the floor a little bit. This screen from this side because I can open it. You'll notice that's the only way to get a screen clean is to hit it from the inside. That's why a window screen, it's important to take those off for a customer. now we're rinsing off the outside. You can see that as I was sweeping the wood pulp off on the outside, it collects here. You really want to get that stuff off. If you don't get it off now, I mean, sometimes it happens, you just take a nylon brush and scrub it when you come to stain to get that wood pulp off. But I'm going to get that cleaned off, the outside of the spindles here, the rest of the house I'm going to wash down. Now if this was a patio and say there was a bunch of wood pulp, you would kind of try to rinse it all into one corner of onto a grass surface, wait for it to dry, and when you come back to stain the deck, then you're going to pick it up, the dry clumps, and throw them away. So I'll get that all washed off. I'll get these plants all rinsed off with a low pressure rinse tip, and then we'll be done. So I'm going to finish up on the outside here first. Okay, so now I'm going to get these plants rinsed off. So I'm going to use the 2510 tip here. It's a little bit lower pressure. Hold my hand in front of there. And come up close, you can see like a little bit of wood fiber on here from when we pressure wash the deck. So that's what we're trying to get off. So if you use the white tip here, you'd probably damage the plant. That's why you want to use this tip. Alright, so this deck is done. We're going to let it dry out, and then we're going to come back and sand the floor and the top rail in a couple of days, and then get it stained.